So basically, I just want to talk about one of the things which is probably most important right now in terms of why people are not able to do a lot of things which they plan to do. And I call it the 10 time wasters or probably the 10 time vampires, right? So what happens here is people want to do a lot of things, but then when it comes to probably not able to do it, one of the reason is that they feel they don't have enough time. So I want to talk about these 10 things which I come across with my clients in terms of why they're not able to do it. The number one is waiting for inspiration. Uh, Look, if you wait for inspiration, believe me that they will never come. You've got to create that inspiration. Now, the inspiration can be a challenging situation around you which you want to figure out a solution that can inspire somebody. But if you wait for inspiration, I got so many people. Look, I might probably lose weight from Jan 1st, 2021. I'll be inspired. It's a new year, and then I'll hit the gym and I'll get back on track. But then what happens? Probably on Jan 1st, after about a week or two, things just disappear. So if you're waiting for inspiration, that's another time vampire for me because the inspiration will never come. You have to probably get inspired from your own and start doing it. And second is worrying about what people will say. Now, this is a very common kind of an excuse I come across when I'm coaching people in terms of Satish, I'm really worried about what people say. Uh, I want to really write, I want to write articles, I want to do videos, and I want to do a lot of things. But you know what? I'm just apprehensive of what people will say. Now, if you're really worried about what people will say, then believe me, you'll never end up doing anything because at some point of time, people will always be commenting you that you're doing something great, or people will also say that you're not doing great, right? And the third time vampire, if I can call, is complaining. Now, complaining is something which basically it's a negative habit, right? It drains you out. If you keep complaining about the environment, about the climate, about zillion other things which is happening around you, what happens is eventually it drains you out because the more you complain, the more agitated you get, and you lose out the energy, whatever you have, for the day's productive tasks. So if you end up complaining more, what happens? It eventually kind of backfires, and you will end up low in energy and probably also in a negative state of mind. So complaining is another thing which I come across a lot in terms of people why they waste their time. They keep complaining, and then eventually they don't have time to do what is important. And the fourth one is trying to please everybody. Now, this is very common, probably more in the corporate setup, because I see that sometimes when people want to move up the corporate ladder, they try to please everybody. It might be their immediate boss, it might be their super bosses, or it might be some of the time people who really matters to them if they want to grow in the organization. Now, if you get into this trap, this is one of the biggest time killers I feel because if you try to please everybody, what happens is I have seen more often than not people realize that and then they tend to kind of palm off a lot more work towards you, and then eventually you'll end up working for 10 hours and then 12 hours, and then believe me, you'll not have any time for yourself. So if you're looking at trying to please everybody, then the only person whom you're going to disappoint is yourself, right? And fifth time vampire, if I can call, is comparing yourself. Now, for no reason, right? You heard that comparison is a thief of success. It's because if you keep comparing yourself with others, now what happens is at any point of time, you'll never be happy because it might be your neighbors, it might be your colleagues, it might be your friends. You always tend to compare. Now, I remember working with a client about a couple of years back. Now he had this habit of comparing himself, right? He used to compare himself, saying, "Oh my God, Satish, one of my office colleague, he got his promotion, and he's younger than me, and I'm feeling, kind of very kind of demotivated." And he started comparing, and then when I was working with him, I realized that he had picked on this habit when he was growing up as a kid. Unfortunately, his mother used to compare him in terms of studies with his neighbors and relatives and cousins. So what happened was At some point of time, he grew up in an environment of comparison. Now, believe me, that was about 3 decades back, and he was still running in the same kind of pattern because more often than not, certain habits are ingrained in us when we're growing up. For me, it had to couple of sessions I had to take for to break that pattern of him so that he doesn't have to compare himself with others and just move on in life. But yes, more often than not, I come across when people compare themselves, they would have picked on this habit as a kid when they're growing up, or they would have been influenced in the immediate environment that time. And the sixth one I would like to talk about is repeating the same mistake. Now, we all do mistakes, right? We are humans and we tend to do a lot of mistakes. I do mistakes every day. But then if you keep repeating the mistakes, it's not a mistake, it's a choice you're making. If you do the same mistake again and again, then it's not called a mistake at all. It's a choice. You're encashing on the choice what you have. So if you're repeating the same mistake, then it's a time waster. It's a time vampire. What happens is it drains you out of your energy and you'll never be able to, kind of get out of the loop. Because sometimes you'll be realizing that you're doing that mistake. Unfortunately, sometimes a lot of people do the same mistake without even realizing that they're doing that mistake. And the seventh time vampire I would say is trying to be perfect. Now, there is nothing in this world which is perfect, right? So if you're trying to be perfect in anything, if you're trying to be perfect in the way you present, if you're trying to be perfect in the way you kind of communicate, if you're trying to be perfect in the way you do your presentation, believe me that perfection will never come because it's extremely difficult to get to the 100% perfection. So what I suggest is if you're looking at being perfect, I think you're setting the bar too high for yourself. Eventually you will crash and burn because to get to that level it takes a lot of effort, and every time you cannot be perfect, whether you go out there to play a game or you're trying to kind of communicate with somebody or you're trying to write an article. There is no perfect article or no perfect game or there's no perfect video which you're trying to create. So it's unnecessary pressure you're trying to put on yourself. And the eighth one is lack of priorities. So why I'm talking about lack of priorities is one of the time wasters is because unless you have your priorities right, it's very difficult to decide what you want to do. I always get up in the morning and I know exactly what my priorities are. So before I step out of myself of the bed, what I do is I know what my priorities are and what I need to focus on. So now that didn't come just in one day. Over the years, I developed that habit. I had developed that habit of working on my top three priorities, mind you. I don't work on a dozen priorities for the day. For me, the three most important tasks for the day, for me, which is priority, I work on it and I step and I start my day. So what I'm saying here is if you do not have priorities in your life, then believe me, every task, every agenda will become a priority. So you got to probably set up your day where you can probably work on your top priorities. So if you do not have that habit, then that's a time waster. What happens is if you're doing one task and then suppose something else comes up, and then after some time a new task comes up, now you'll be jumping between tasks, and that's when multitasking happens. And multitasking is not a great way to kind of work because I have spoken about this. Multitasking is a myth, and people are actually not doing more, they're doing less. So if you're looking at working on your time, then look at your priorities. Focus on your priorities and see how best you can do that. Right? And the ninth one is the fear of failure. Now, the fear of failure is very real because we basically humans are wired that way. We are wired in such a way that more or less we kind of tend to oscillate more towards being negative because that's how we probably grew up in the caves and that's how our environment was. We've always used to look around for anything which is around the bushes, which will probably jump on us. But then that's how we were wired hundreds and thousands of years ago. But then if you look at it now, the fear of failure is very real. People, if they want to do something, I've come across a lot of my own clients, the fear of failure is so strong that they stop taking any decisions in their life. If they need to change the job or if they need to kind of get into a new role, they're so scared of probably getting into that role because for them, what if I fail? And that's always on the top of the list. Now, this is a habit which you need to break. If there's a trait which you're probably become good at, then you have to work around it and then break through this pattern. Because these are all the top 9, 10 which I'm just discussing about, is what I have experienced with hundreds of people I have worked with over a decade. Now, it's not that I'm talking here with just thing. I've worked with people, I've helped them to break each of these traits and habits, and that's the reason I'm sharing this with you, because these will waste a lot of time of people, and I experienced this because I worked with them very closely. So the fear of failure is another thing. Now, how do you work on overcoming the fear of failure? There is no one magic pill, right? Let me say, if you got a fear of swimming, now the fear of water probably is something which will stop you from going and learning to swim. I'm aware probably now due to the COVID-19, it's not possible for everybody to go and learn swimming, but at some point of time, right, you might have to step into the water and start learning to swim. That's the only way you'll be able to swim. Otherwise, the fear of water will always be there the rest of your life. So the only way which you can work on overcoming the fear of failure is by stepping into it and actually doing it. I'm not saying that tomorrow step in, and if you got a fear of public speaking, by the way, that's the number one fear of people. If you didn't know that, across the globe, the number one fear of people is always public speaking. It's a no-brainer because they're probably being judged by people. They're very conscious about what people are saying and looking at them, that they fear of going out there and they're stopping. So what I'm saying is, if you're looking at overcoming the fear of public speaking, I'm not saying tomorrow go up there and just start talking to people in front of an audience. Both of us do know that it doesn't work that way. But then you got to step up. You might want to talk for about 5 minutes today, probably record it and see, and do it for 10 minutes, and then tell your family to sit and see if you can talk in front of them a topic, very simple topic. Now, these are small things which you can do, but eventually you might want to do something which will help you to completely overcome the fear of failure. And that could be, what is the fear of you're going through? It could be driving, it could be a fear of public speaking, it could be any of these things. Pick and choose what you want to overcome and put in your comments, and I'll be happy to address those things in the next video when I go live. And the last but not the least is not living your life. Now, this is also done waste, because people, they kind of uh, repent that, what, I'm not actually living my life. I'm doing a job which I don't like, and I got so much of talent with me, I'm not able to utilize that in the present job, and blah blah blah, right? Now, who's stopping them from changing the job and doing something which they really like? It's they themselves. So it's obvious, right? Because if you're not living your life because of various reasons, you got to take charge of your life. Otherwise, what happens is you'll probably be doing things which you don't like. You'll not be kind of motivated, and that inspiration is not there. So it's all probably interconnected. What happens is, if you need to live your life the way you want to do, then you got to take bold decisions. Now, are you ready to take the bold decisions, right? Because if you keep waiting for inspiration, if you keep complaining about it, or if you keep comparing yourself, then what happens is you're just wasting your time. So if you need to break through this pattern of wasting time, I just gone through the 10 probable reasons why people waste their time. I can run this through quickly once more for each one of you, just to note down. One is waiting for inspiration. Two is worrying about what people will say. Three is complaining. Four is trying to please everybody. Five is comparing yourself. Six, repeating the same mistakes. And seven is trying to be perfect. And eight, lack of priorities. And nine, the fear of failure. And 10, not living your life. So I just covered the 10 things which I feel is what makes people waste a lot of time. Now, do you have anything else which probably I missed out? I would love to read your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll probably reply to it once I've finished with this video. Let me see what thoughts you'll come up with. I'll look forward for your thoughts, and we'll take it from there. Take care. All the very best.